It is my pleasure to give you a warm welcome to this latest edition of the News in English on Rwanda Television with me, Serge Nhore. I hope you're having a great start of the week. Now let us begin with the headlines. Delegates have gathered in Kigali for the second edition of the Nuclear Energy Innovation Summit on Africa. Now straight to the details. Experts in nuclear energy have noted that it will provide many benefits here in Rwanda because it is used in the diagnosis and treatment of all types of cancers, while also contributing to increasing electricity production. And Ola Gladys with the details on that.
Experts in nuclear energy explain that the mineral uranium is the primary source of this energy, which is obtained after it has been highly processed. Dr. Emmanuel Abenanye, who holds a PhD in nuclear science, clearly explains the process through which uranium is refined until it can produce nuclear energy.
So it's that uranium that has been enriched, put into pellets and put it in a reactor. Then it produces energy. But when they put it in a reactor, it produces energy. That energy can run the turbines and then plus steam, and then it runs, and then the other conversions that are done to produce electricity. That's how we get it. Then in our research reactors, that's where we can produce those called radioisotopes, like the molybdenum that is used in cancer treatment, like those cesium-137 that is used in distant gauges. So it's the one that comes and put into containers and shielded not to affect the environment and the people. Then it comes stored in special containers that can be used in our measurements, in our detection for road constructions, industries, agriculture, among others.
These are the same types of energy used in some of the machines employed in advanced medical treatment. Some of them are in sections currently being expanded at King Faisal Hospital. One area has been designated for PET CT scan and SPECT CT scan machines, which will use nuclear energy in cancer diagnosis. Rwanda records more than 14,000 patients suffering from different types of cancer, including over 7,000 newly diagnosed cases. The disease also claims the lives of more than 4,000 people every year. Samuel Wujingo, a medical physicist, notes that nuclear energy is generally one of the solutions used in cancer treatment.
This nuclear energy, there is what we call radiopharmaceuticals. These are produced either in what we call cyclotron or nuclear reactor, where these products, radiopharmaceuticals, can be injected in a patient. So after the injection, then the patient is scanned in a scan, either PET or SPECT. Then due to the detector of these machines, they can detect this nuclear energy, because when you inject a patient, for example, when a patient has a cancer, these radiopharmaceuticals are concentrated in a region where there is a cancer. So if the patient is scanned, it is easily seen in the machine where the cancer is. And this has the advantage to detect the cancer at a very early stage.
Apart from being used in healthcare, nuclear energy also helps increase electricity production. This is one of the topics that will be discussed at the Nuclear Energy Innovation Summit, which is set to take place in Kigali on Tuesday and will bring together experts in the field. Nuclear energy expert Dr. Emmanuel Abenanye believes that this is currently a fast and affordable way of generating the electricity needed by a country like Rwanda.
We cannot go away with technology and changes. We have to embrace it. If there have been other conventional means, now the world is changing. It's cheap, it's reliable, it's economical. Because if I get my density gauge, I put it here, it doesn't require me to get other things to use. I just placing it there in the ground, I know how much water is there. So that's how it is going to be easier to be used, reducing manpower, and then giving the specifics. That is what we call specifics of what you're going to get. You are getting exact results.
The chairman of the board at the Rwanda Atomic Energy, Lasiza Zerbo, highlights that Rwanda is prepared to share its experience with the international community and also learn a great deal from others in this field.
The leadership of President Kagame, because they've been an institutional framework that allowed students from Rwanda to be trained in Russia, in Korea, in China, in the United States, for instance. And then to a point where today we have a critical mass of experts and scientists that are ready to help us move forward and then start the implementation of our projects. When I say start the implementation of our project, we have scientists that will do the technical work that will make the program feasible. And that's where we are in Rwanda. Yeah. And that thanks to the policy that the government has had for the past 5 years.
Yeah. The research sector, mining, agriculture, education, and others are among the fields that benefit from the use of nuclear energy in Rwanda. Uranium, which is the source of this energy, will be processed by Rwanda up to about 20% so that it can be used in these sectors. This is in contrast to military use, where it is enriched up to about 90%.
Thank you, Enola. Now to environmental matters, and as countries face mounting pressure from floods, droughts and rising temperatures linked to climate change, Rwanda says its long-term adaptation strategy is aimed at reducing vulnerability and building resilience across communities, ecosystems and key sectors of the economy. William Evans Mutabazi with more on that.
Rwanda's climate adaptation planning journey dates back nearly 2 decades, beginning with the submission of its National Adaptation Program of Action to the UN Climate Convention in 2006. Since then, the country has strengthened its climate commitments through policies, including the Green Growth and Climate Resilience Strategy, as well as updated nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement. Authorities say Rwanda is now carrying out climate risk assessments across major catchments and strengthening technical capacity to support long-term adoption planning and climate resilience nationwide.
As climate impacts intensify worldwide, national adaptation plans remain critical tools for integrating resilience into national development planning and investment. For Rwanda, climate resilience remains at the center of our national development agenda. Through our Vision 2050, revised national determined contributions, NDC 30, which has a horizon of 2035, National Adaptation Plan, and Green Growth and Climate Resilience Strategy, Rwanda is committed to build a low carbon and climate resilient economy that safeguards livelihoods, ecosystems, and sustainable development gains.
Dr. Paul Disanka, manager of the Response Subdivision at the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change Secretariat, UNFCCC, praised Rwanda's National Climate Fund as a good practice for locally driven adoption financing. He says, access challenges remain, but regional initiatives like the Africa Adoption Initiative are helping countries build capacity and integrate adoption into development planning.
Well, there are a lot of good practices. Rwanda has succeeded in going beyond the public funding that comes from international sources to actually create a national fund to be able to address these needs. So that's one of the good practices that they can teach other countries, to also create national funds that will grow over time, but will help to address locally identified needs. The challenges are many. I think that they're being overcome slow by slow. It's usually how to access the funding. It requires expertise, requires sometimes consultants, but Africa is also developing its own regional programs to help African countries access. So there's the Africa Adaptation Initiative, for instance, that works with a number of countries to help them bridge that gap of how to access existing funding and build that capacity. So institutional awareness and an ownership of adaptation is increasing in many countries. I think a lot of leaders in most countries now speak about climate change and the importance of integrating that into their development plans. So we're making good progress. We just need to do more, scale up and make sure that things that we didn't expect before, we can anticipate and start to address.
The acting UN resident coordinator in Rwanda said that while Rwanda has made progress in accessing climate finance, more global support is needed to help countries fund and implement adoption projects.
So here in Rwanda, the Ministry of Environment has made great strides towards mobilizing finance at scale. by earlier on becoming accredited to the Green Climate Fund and to the Adaptation Fund. We think those are very important first steps. However, here and elsewhere, more support is needed, both in terms of volume of funding available to countries and assistance to become the barriers to access finance, including developing project pipelines, which is critical.
NEP Expo 2026, which brought together over 200 delegates from across the country, focused on strengthening climate adoption planning and advancing global cooperation on climate resilience. More than 10,000 hectares of degraded landscapes have been restored, alongside large-scale watershed management programs targeting river basins and wetlands vulnerable to flooding and erosion. Government-led adoption efforts have also included the restoration of thousands of hectares of marshlands and the expansion of climate-smart agriculture projects benefiting hundreds of thousands of households across Rwanda. William Evans, RwandaTV News.
Thank you, William. Now, last week, Rwanda hosted the Africa CEO Forum, and my colleagues here at RBA spoke to a number of participants as part of our special coverage of the event. Here are two of those interviews.
To the special coverage of the 2026 Africa CEO Forum here at Kigali Convention Center in Rwanda. Now, one of the key themes dominating discussions at this year's forum is the importance of infrastructure, connectivity, and regional integration in building a more competitive African economy. Now, joining us now is CEO of Africa Global Logistics, Philippe Labon, one of the continent's leading logistics operators, providing integrated ports, maritime, rail, and logistics solutions across more than 50 countries. Thank you so much for being with us.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, you're welcome. So could you tell us a little bit more about Africa Global Logistics?
Africa Global Logistics is a company which is in 47 countries in Africa with 25,000 people. We build ports, we operate ports, and we move goods. So we are a trusted logistic partners. Our owner is MSC, which is the largest container shipping company. We operate 24 port concessions and 19 in Africa and 5 in the rest of the world. So our DNA is Africa.
Yes.
Is Africa because we have our setup in Africa. We have 250 agencies in Africa. We have millions of warehouses. We have 60 dry ports. But also our DNA is Africa because our people are African.
Love that you say that the DNA is Africa and the people is Africa, which is what such forums are here for, to bring together African CEOs, African people in different sectors to come up with solutions that are suitable for Africa. Now, one of the stronger conversations at this forum has been around shared infrastructure and regional mega projects. How important is cross-border collaboration when it comes to ports, rail systems, and trade corridors, which is something that Africa Global Logistics does?
When you move goods from one country to the other, seamless cooperation is key. But before the cooperation, you need the infrastructure. And we estimate that there is a gap of infrastructure in Africa of about 150 billion per year. So in such forum, we try to structure the financing of projects with multilateral partners. There are projects that go beyond the pure private sector. So we have the opportunity there to meet DFI, to meet other partners, to meet head of state, and try to structure together key infrastructures like port, railroad, dry port. And then once we have built this infrastructure, the real task is cooperation between countries. And when you build a corridor, for instance, from Dar es Salaam to Isaka to Kigali, you need the asset, you need the port in Dar es Salaam, you need the rail, you need a dry port in Isaka, you need the trucks. Yes. But then you should coordinate all these mode of transports what we call multimodal transport, intermodal transport. And it is our duty to organize that and to improve what should be improved. I believe that we understand very well that we have entered in an era of volatility for some reasons, geopolitics, outbreaks. So now we have to build resilient value chain. And what we recommend to our clients, to our customers, is if they want to build a resilient value chain, they should have their their feedstock, their product close to their market and close to consumption area. So it means that we should invest together in a large facility that will then serve a region. But the era when you have just-in-time delivery from China to Africa is over, or where you had your hub in Middle East or in Europe to feed Africa is over. So what we are promoting today in that forum is how to structure a regional hub. It could be in Tanzania, it could be in Kigali, to feed the market as smoothly as possible.
Yes.
So it requires investment, it requires capex, it requires trucks, railroad, but it requires close cooperation between governments to make the journey of our customers as lean as possible.
Yes, thank you so much for elaborating on that. And lastly, Mr. Lebon, what do you hope can be the key takeaways from this year's forum, or what do you hope to come out of this from Africa CEO Forum 2026?
I believe there is not a takeaway.
Yeah.
There are so many takeaways. First of all, we have the opportunity to discuss with leaders and to hear about their vision, what they plan, because politics is of the essence, vision is of the essence. And then a private sector, we can jump into this vision, invest together, invest with DFI. So this is what I'm expecting, vision, meeting people, meeting DFI to fund my project, and meeting lovely people like you to who allows me to explain
Spread
what we
the
do.
word, yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Lebon.
Thank you.
Still here at the Kigali Convention Center for the second day of Africa CEO Forum 2026, and I'm joined by Amadou Gallo. He has played a major role in developing basketball in Africa and connecting the continent to the global opportunities through sports. As we gather here to this year's platform, the African CEO Forum, which focuses on investment, growth, but at the same time, youth opportunity. And sport has really been one of the key main, I would say, investors in terms of like giving youth opportunities and job. As we're starting off this conversation, Amadou, maybe you can help us understand, also connect sports and what you guys are doing as BAL, but at the same time, this year's theme. Why should we embrace the shared ownership as a continent, as Africa?
We have a huge opportunity in Africa because our biggest asset is really our demographic dividend. You got the majority of the population made up of youth, and it is important that we get this youth engaged in positive social activities and give them reasons to dream big, to have high ambition. And sport is a language that they speak, and sport is the greatest equalizers. It inspires. And today, talking about the Basketball Africa League, the Basketball Africa League is a culmination of many decades of work that we have been engaged on the continent to promote basketball, to grow it from grassroots level, and we've created a pathway now from grassroots to elite, where young people can have access to playing the game, and through our academies, they can be identified, the elite talent, and given an opportunity to develop their full potential. Now, a young African talent doesn't have to feel like they have to go somewhere else in order to maximize their talent. We've proven that we can produce elite talent on the continent. And now, taking it to the Basketball Africa League, it was important to create this platform where all these ideas in terms of using sports as an economic growth engine could be materialized. That's what the league is. And this is where, you need partnerships. And this is why with people with whom we have a shared vision. Africa is a massive continent that is very diverse. It is important to make sure that we can form the type of partnerships with the private public sector that can help scale the opportunity to make sure that Africa's sports contribution to the global sports industry is bigger than what it is today.
What role do you think BAL is playing in terms of like upscaling the Africa's economy? You kind of talked about job opportunities. We do have the Basketball African that is coming up now in Rwanda. Like, what are some of the opportunities? Maybe you can tap on that and point them that you think you guys are, contributing in the economy, Africans on the continent, and you guys have been doing it for quite some time now since the partnership has been going on.
Very concrete term, at the conclusion of our 4th season, we engaged a third party to do an economic impact study, and the results was that $250 million have been contributed to the GDPs of countries where we play, and about 37,000 jobs have been created. You can see it here in Kigali when we bring our finals here, all the activities that are happening around the arena. There is commerce, you see jobs in tech, web services, transportations, hotels, and culinary arts. All these using the convening power of basketball. So that's what we meant when we talked about launching the BAL becoming an economic growth engine for the continent that will create jobs and still continuing to inspire the next generation to play the game, and also to have a place where right here on the continent they can start playing the game and becoming professional without necessarily having to leave the continent. The partnerships we formed, for example, with the Rwanda Development Board here in Rwanda has been foundational, and it's been now 6 years going, but we've seen, tremendous evolution, both from a standpoint of this infrastructure, Kigali Arena that's been built, how it is now activated when we bring the finals, and now how the RDB have gone beyond just this tournament to host other events, that are bringing revenues to the country, that is creating jobs also.
Many young people in Africa have talent, but there is also the lack of facilities when it comes to that. There is training, but at the same time exposure. What practical steps are needed to really go beyond and achieve, even go to the next level of practical ways of like developing in terms of like the talent that we have, in terms of like also this where we are right now? We are the Africa CEO Forum, where we have so many CEOs, a private sector that's also contributing a lot to the economy of different countries. What are some of the practical ways do you think can be put in place in different countries? Because I feel like right now, as we're here in Rwanda, so many countries are in Rwanda right now as we speak. What do you think are some of those steps and practical ways can be put in place?
When you have this convening and of diverse people from multiple sectors in industry, you got governments, heads of states, and captains of industries, from entertainment to sport to tech to just business in general, coming in one place with a common goal, common purpose. We want to move Africa forward. We're looking at ways to make sure that Africa can rely on Africa and Africans and African businesses to not only, move forward, but leverage its resources, transform its resources, and make sure that it benefits its people all across the continent. And for us, we're talking about creating an industry around basketball that will create jobs, that is going to continue to uplift communities. We know what sports contribute in terms of just, promoting a healthier community and society. But now we're talking about sports as an economic driver. That's, countries are realizing that it can be as important as the, energy sector, that is, obviously contributing to GDPs. In the same vein, our talent can also create tremendous economic value. We have incredibly huge ambitions with the league. We want to, take the Basketball Africa League to becoming one of the premier professional sports league in the world in years to come. So, and I think we share the same vision and ambition with many other, sectors, whether it's in government. I think any government anywhere in Africa should have a youth agenda, because that's the demographic dividend that we talked about. We got to make sure that we are inspiring this youth to be ambitious. We make sure that we're equipping this youth and keep them focused on really, some positive activities, and sport provides that. And we've started a long time ago, to really establish this pathway now from grassroots to elite, where we're providing opportunity for young people to participate in the sports, and gradually to identify elite talent that could, really play across the Basketball Africa League. That's what we are starting to see with this league, with 12 teams from 12 different African countries. But to meet those ambitions, we need to bring along partners that share the same vision, share the same commitment. And I talked about the Rwanda Development Board, but there are other partners in multiple sectors, in banking, in telco, obviously, outfitting that are coming in. They all are also interested in growing their businesses in Africa. And I think in the end, everybody benefits, and that's the only way we can scale the opportunity and meet our ambitions.
In few coming days, we'll be having the BA also happen. We'll have the first day that is coming up in a few days, some of the great performances. We can't wait to witness also the biggest play games and playoffs and all that. So thank you so much for joining us, Amadou. We are glad we had this conversation.
Thank you. And yes, super excited about the DL finals, season 6 final coming up May 22nd to 31st here at Kigali.
Thank you so much for joining us for this edition. I hope you'll stay with Rwanda Television as the programs continue. I'll see you soon. Until then, it's goodbye.